Welcome back to the Big Board. I'm going to take a look at C3i magazine, the Gettysburg game that came in it. Just had my first playthrough of the game, and you know, it's cool, interesting. If you don't want to listen any further, then you can take that away and do with it as you will. Where to start? So, puts you in a situation where you are the Army general commanding the forces approaching Gettysburg on July the 1st and running through July the 3rd. I'm just looking at the turn track here, and each day is split up into two turns, an AM and a PM turn. And I'm going to deal with something that I usually deal with last when I do these sort of walkthroughs on the structure of the game and stuff like that. We're going to have a look at the components, so we've got our map, which is, to me, looks very much like a historical map that has been heavily artistically edited, and it certainly has the antique feel to it. It does come with all the grid lines and elevation lines, and if you can see that clearly. And if you know your terrain pretty well, I bet you could work out the names of all the different hills and bits and pieces. Having been to Gettysburg 3 times, you would think I would know all the names of all the hills and where they are, but just based on where the pikeways and the roads are. But I can't remember. I need to pull an atlas out. Excuse me. So I've got a residual cold, so we're going to have to work with that. So your map has a ammunition track on it, which also doubles as a track to keep tally of the number of additional moves you're going to get once you stop passing. Once you've said you're done, there's the other player is going to get an additional number of moves based on a rule, and we'll leave that rule out. You don't need to know what that is. Same with the combat, well, same sort of thing. So you'll mark this on a track here. Keep track of your ammo here, and you've got your turn track. So components are pretty straightforward, and you know, something about Confederate and Union units in ACW warfare coming from C3i that just is always kind of leaves me a little cold. And I'm going to try and get this counter up here so you can see it. I don't know if you'll be able to or not, but there you go. So of course it's backwards because I'm using the front-facing camera, but you'll get the idea that. And now, of course, we're at sync, and there's an artillery support unit and a leader unit, which has a little groovy artwork icon on it. I'm going to switch the camera around in a minute. We'll have a closer look. I find the art, it's okay, right? So if this is a magazine game, it's introductory, not expecting great things and amazing things. But when you see the map, you go, oh my gosh, wow, that looks really amazing. And then you put the units on it and it looks okay, but it's not exemplary, right? It doesn't go wow. Great Union-centric charts and artwork throughout the rulebook, and a very clearly written 11-page booklet, including setup and full-color descriptions in the rulebook. So probably one of the clearest Mark Herman rulebooks I've ever read. It has been very well edited and well produced, and it is a fine playing game. It is also, as a caveat to all you American Civil War aficionados, this is my very first tactical board game for the ACW that I've actually played, A, to completion, and B, any significant number of turns. I've only really played operational stuff, so you have to take all that with a grain of salt. Now, so it puts you clearly in this role of Army commander, and your decision making capability is really built around these divisions of units that are separated into cores, which are not really relevant. You don't have to keep the cores together as long as you stay within the range of the one overall commander for each side. You have full information, you understand what's going on, you can see where all the units are. There are no hidden units, there's no hidden information. The only time there's a hidden, what I would call a hidden choice or a piece of intelligence that's unknown, is when you're deciding whether or not you're going to use an artillery point and conduct an artillery barrage either in offense or defense mode, and you put your counter in the hand and you show whether you are conducting artillery support or not, right? So that's the only hidden data in the game. Now let's switch over to the map and look at that while I talk you through the rest of the game and a little bit more about the 7 or 8 things that I like to focus on with a war game. Okay, let's get back into it and focus in on the game per se. So your player objectives are very straightforward. You are literally going to be, and there are no VP counters actually, and I just used a couple of blanks that were there, and you're only gaining VPs for killing units, eliminating units, and for the Confederates, having control or a line of supply, I should say, without a zone of control on it, from here all the way back to here, right? So if we look at the full map, you'll see that's quite a substantial area to attempt to cover. We're drinking Templeton Rye, and it's a barrel strength, ridiculously strong. It's 114 proof, and I've got an enormous ice cube in there that I'm trying to get it to water this thing down. Despite being very strong, it does have a nice sort of sweetness to it, and it's got some woody things going on there. Quite nice. So we were talking about player objectives. So that's how you win, is killing units. And clearly enough, at the outset, you've got forces arrayed up here for the Confederates, and only 1 or 2 units on the board, Buford and a couple other folks on the board. So there's an early quick push towards Gettysburg, and then as reinforcements come in from the south, the Union tends to build up a line of defense through this heavy terrain. The only terrain modifiers, well, we'll get to that in a minute, but so order of battle, all the named divisions that were there, I assume, are there, including that blank counter. But you'll see that all of the majority, all the forces that you would probably expect are represented, but they are represented in somewhat of an abstract level. And keep in mind, this is a magazine introductory game, probably more in the vein of Battle for Moscow than say, the campaigns of Lee, or something like of that, the Prados design. So I think it represents the order of battle fairly accurately given the scale. The conflict resolution is pretty interesting because it literally is, when you're in battle mode, you're either in movement mode or battle formation, and you're going to have 2 units adjacent to each other as such, and you might have a second dude, or even a third dude. And if we were going to execute this combat, it's going to be based off of a die roll that each side will make, a 1d6 die roll. Highest roll wins. And the only die roll modifiers, or DRMs, that are going to be applicable are if you have multiple units adjacent to your attacker, or adjacent to the enemy, I should say. You choose 1 unit to attack with. You're going to get a modifier for that. You're going to receive a modifier for the star that is represented on that unit there. It shows that it's somewhat of an elite unit. The most number of stars is 2, and there are only 3 or 4 units with those. And of course, you'll pick up some terrain modifiers, a +2 for the terrain modifier. And then if you run an artillery barrage, either both sides run, and there's an arty duel, and the winner, which is a die roll, the winner will get a +2 DRM. excuse me, to his roll. And if there is not, if the enemy or the opposing force chooses not to use their DRM or their artillery, then there's no DRM for them, only one for the person that did use them. There's a few little minor rules. If you roll the natural 6, bad things happen with artillery and you lose an extra artillery support point. The Confederates start with a significantly less or lower amount of artillery ammunition than the Union does, and so wise use of that is going to be important. Now, here's things that are interesting that I think. Well, so when you make this combat, you'll get a result, and that is going to be a net difference in those two 1d6 rolls with the DRMs, and one side is going to have +1 or more over the other side, unless it's a tie, of course. If it's a tie, nothing happens, everybody stays where they are. But if it's a +1 or a +2, there's a retreat. If it's a 3 or a 4, it means the unit is blown, and they are going to come off the board and go 2 turns into the future and come back, assuming that there are no special rules prohibiting that, and we'll get to that in July the 3rd day of the battle. If you are blown, then that means that you are probably dead as well. And then, of course, there's defender eliminated if it's a 5 or a 6 higher, I think it is, than the opposing die roll. And so that'll eliminate the unit completely. And eliminate a unit and give you 1 VP. So, order of battle, mechanically, how is this game working? And this is where the neatness and this interesting mechanics come into play, and the gameplay becomes richer and more nuanced immediately because of the way the game is structured. Let's talk about movement and combat. And this is going to be the heart of the game here, and the reason why I enjoy this game as much as I have, and why I think it's unique enough for you to want to consider having a look at it. The idea with the game is that these units, if you're more than 2 hexes away, you stay on your movement formation side. Once you get within 2 hexes, you're going to need to flip over to your battle formation. So, as a moving unit, there's a sequence of play. The Confederates are always going to move or attack first. So they're going to move and go 1, 2, 3, and stop here. And this chap, now the Union player can move a unit, and he might move this guy 1, 2, 3, 4, and he'll need to flip. Now play reverts back to the Confederate player, and he might go 1, and now he'll have to end his movement, or I could go 1 to here and end my movement. Oh, you can't see that piece there. Okay, 1. Of course, it would always help if I had the camera so you could actually see what was going on. 1 to here. Now these guys can continue to move. They can move. They're a few hexes away, so they'll go 1, 2 to here. They'll stop and flip over. The Union player may have another piece somewhere over here. He's going to move into the frame. 1. And we're going to keep going backwards and forwards as long as we wish to until one side passes. So I'll go to here, and then these guys might move they might move to here, and then this dude might move to here, and then this guy might move to here, and he's done. Now, if these were the only units on the board, this guy could make a move, and this fellow would say pass, and we'd roll a d6, and we would add up the number of units not in a zone of control, plus the d6, and that's how many additional moves these folks would get. So let's just say they got a couple of extra moves, so they might go 1 and 1. So there's an element here where by thoughtfully choosing which units to move, you can preempt or stop or limit the movement of your enemy by using these multiple moves. There's no reason why you can't move this same unit 4 times if you wish, right? That is entirely possible. And not move anybody else and just move the same guy over and over until you get him to where you want to be. Obviously, if I started doing this guy might go to here. And that would preempt and end my turn, right? Which now might leave this guy in a precarious situation. He may go 1. Let's do my pass. We roll a die, and then I can come in here, and now I've got, 2 units to 1, and maybe I've got another chap here, and he pops in, and now all of a sudden I'm in a really sticky wicket there, right? So, fascinating stuff. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that if I do indeed have 3 units here, and they're all attacking, and let's say I use my best unit first and attack, but I end up with a poor result. That's the end of that combat for this guy. He's done. Now it's the Confederates' turn to attack. They may choose to attack or they may not. They might say, you know what, I don't want to attack. So they don't, and they pass. Well, once again, we'll roll a die and we add up, and that's going to tell us how many additional attacks we're going to get. Well, let's say I get 2 additional attacks. Well, so now I might want to, this will have to be flipped over. Now I may wish to attack with this guy, and he may get a no result. Or he might get a result, and this guy retreats and allows him to advance, and he can attack again. And if that happened again, he could attack again. And we could keep moving and using that unit until we ran out of attacks, or if we had not, the Confederate guys had not passed, we could also use, they could be conducting attacks as well. But if that attack also failed, then I could attack with this guy. So there's this decision making that has to go on as the game plays out. That, and particularly when things sort of move past Gettysburg and you start getting into these heavily wooded and hilled areas where terrain modifiers start to take effect for the Union. They're kind of spread out around here, and they're trying to protect the roads to the southeast behind them, and the Confederates are pressing up. You're really going to have to start thinking about which unit is going to attack first, how many units are going to attack. What if the enemy doesn't attack at all and they pass? What if you only roll a 1? Well, what would happen if you roll a 6? That'd be pretty good. Are you in a position to take advantage of either of those situations as the case arises? So it lends itself to a lot of additional play, and it's pretty interesting stuff. So the conflict resolution, and I guess you could look at that, I look at that kind of as, it's the movement combat mechanics, but it's a function, I think, of really the logistical, the way logistics are abstracted in the game, right? The way that, I've got this dude here, and that headquarters is picked up and placed every turn, and you want him to be within 6 hexes of everybody so they all stay in supply, or 6 hexes of where you hope they may end up so that you don't have, run out of the command range and then have to start moving back towards your commander. So the headquarters range is important, but it's not the logistical tether. I think the logistical concept is built into this movement combat mechanic where you choose how many times you're going to fight with each unit and combination of units. That's kind of an underlying thread there. And obviously there's the artillery support track, which tracks ammo for artillery. So the historical narrative, a little hard for me to say. I've read a little bit about the Gettysburg battle. I've walked the battlefield, and I've seen where the formations sort of end up. My game, we had the 3rd Corps making a really big push down towards the Taneytown Road, exit K, I should say, down here, and also a push down the Baltimore Pike as well to try and grab the victory. They were up 3 VPs to 0. And because of that stretch, we had units kind of strung out along here that really put them in a disadvantageous situation, and the Union were able to sweep some cavalry around and in and support attacks by infantry against the Union. And I just realized that I used Buford and another unit to attack an infantry unit when it should have been the other way around. So that result was probably mitigated. Nevertheless, when you see my battle report, you'll see that the Union won fair and square. So that's interesting. I made a mistake there because cavalry cannot attack an infantry formation. So I think historical narrative probably works out fine, but I'm sure you're going to get some funky edge cases where, depending on, if a string of 1d6 die rolls go the wrong way, where you get an enormous amount of moves for one side or the other, that's going to obviously change the flavor of the game and the historical outcome, which is okay, right? I think we're playing a nice, light, fun, introductory magazine game, and we would expect that. So no big holes there, I don't believe. Playtime, super fast, very easy to play once you get the hang of it. My first 1 or 2 turns, I made a few little errors here and there. I found the playtime to be expedient, quick, efficient, and clean. And I think the components are pleasant. I like there's a single chart in here. Where did I put where's the play aid? Well, that's interesting. What did I do with it? Must be underneath. Yeah, there it is. All right. Nice play aid here. Summarizes the sequence of play, how combat works, the attack table results, and movement chart. That's all you need. It's interesting that the artwork, all of it is Union centric. Any artwork that's in here. You can see the rules are well laid out. It's a 2-panel, 2-column, big font. Easy to read. Player's notes throughout, designer notes as well. Just a little bit at the end there, a little blurb right there. And a really well done game. And I think you could probably play this a dozen times and still feel like you might have a couple more plays out of it. I don't know that it's play 100 times type of game or anything like that, but it is certainly interesting, and I would like to see more of this system and see how other battles work and see if they turn out how we all would expect them to. So very well done. It comes in the C3i magazine from Roger McGowan, and it's a pretty nifty little package and a great addition from the C3i folks. So there you go. Gettysburg, Mark Herman, arguably one of his finest and clearest designs. There, I'll say that. While he has written large, complex, and involved games with many, many pages of rules and hundreds of pieces, this is the clearest and most succinct rule book I've ever read of Mark's, and it's a fun game to play. And we'll leave it at that. All the best.